We are now live on Facebook.
Right. So I'm going to give about 60 seconds from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your camera is really good. It's like you're like a portrait.
It's brilliant.
Oh, bad.
We should do that, Rattapong, you know, side elevation. But my side elevation is a bit weird, you know. All right. You can see only 9 participants on the screen here.
Yes, all the very best. It's 2:25 here in India, so I'm just going to broadcast. It started broadcasting.
Okay, Shweta, we have to wait the attendees. Did you open the attendees now? Okay, I can see the number increasing, right?
Yes. All the very best. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you,
Nippon. A
Nippon.
great session. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome all the students from Acacia, educators, and all the architects of Acacia. Welcome to our next ACAE Knowledge Sharing Series Year 2020 Acacia Committee on Architectural Education. Thank you to our technical partner, Nippon Paint. My name is Architect Adrenta Aziz. I would like to welcome all of you to the next series session here, Reframing Resilient Urbanism. So I would like to welcome our chairman of ACAE, Architect Gayendra Shekhawat. Please welcome Architect Gayendra.
Thank you, Adranta, Deputy Chair ACAE. Thank you so much for introducing me, and thank you all the participants, the panelists, the moderators. I'm really glad that this time we have our Honorary Secretary Acacia, Architect Hui Ming Chan from Singapore. She also happens to be Director in DP Architects. I'm thankful to Architect Myung Sik Lee, Professor from Korea, South Korea, and also Architect Nadia Qureshi, Urban Development Expert from Lahore, from Institute of Architects, Pakistan. So thank you so much, and the session is going to be moderated by Professor Pechladda and Professor Rattapong from ASA, Thailand. So I believe this would be a very fruitful session on a very appropriate topic, which is very much in these days. So I wish all the participants, panelists, and moderators a very good session. And now it's time to start the session. Professor Pechladda and Professor Art, please.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Architect Adrianta, and thank you, Architect Jayanendra. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, a very welcome to webinar ACAE Knowledge Sharing from ACAE under Acacia. This is the first online activity to deliver and share the knowledge to all Acacia members. I'm Architect Pechladda Pechpakdee with Architect Rattapong Angkasith. We are from Asst, Thailand. Well, what about Ajahn Rattapong?
Okay, so dear crowd, everyone, just greeting in Thai. So okay, so welcome everyone to this seminars. So we really pleased to invite you to be our special speakers for all of the speakers here for ACAE Knowledge Sharing Series webinar sessions on topic reframing resilient urbanism. Because of serious shock from many difficulties such as climate change, pandemics, and technology disruption, our society are in the middle of nowhere to move on to sustainability in the future. So these crooks have impact on both social issues and the built environment. As architects, how could we cope up with this unprecedented future? How could we send the signal to the society through our voices and decide for the better living from household to urban scale? Okay.
All right, okay. Now it is our great honor to have 3 special speakers from 3 zones, Zone A, Zone B, Zone C from Acacia. Let's start with first Nadia and Qureshi from Lahore, Pakistan. She graduated from University Michigan Ann Arbor, USA. Her master degree is a master degree of urban regional planning, concentrations, planning and development countries, and urban designs. She is the expertise about urban planning and development with many design and development projects. Second, architect Hui Min Chen from Singapore. Hui Min graduated with Master Architect from Graduate School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation at Columbia University and obtained a Master's of Science and Sustainable Building Design from the University of Nottingham. She is the Director of DP Architects by running large-scale architectural and urban planning projects in the Middle East, Turkey, and in India. Lastly, from Zone C, Professor Myung from Dongguk University, Korea. He graduated from University of Michigan Ann Arbor, USA. His PhD is about architectural planning in School of Architecture. His thesis is about design knowledge representation based on visual and design thinking process. He is the expertise about facility management, disaster management, and environmental management with many researches and international academic journal. Well, what about our rule for the session today, agenda?
Okay, thank you very much. Such a nice speakers today. I think we will have a lot of knowledge from the speakers. So for this sessions, we will divide it into parts. So we have 3 sessions, okay? So the first one will be short and sharp, okay? So each of the speaker will tell us about a definition of resilient cities in the views. Well, it should be about 10 minutes. I'm sorry, about 3 minutes for each speakers. It will be really brief, okay? And then the second one will follow by the case studies, explain of the resilient city in your country, okay? So about 10 minutes of each speakers. And then the last one is the role of designer, architects, and urban planner for the sustainability and on unprecedented future for 5 minutes for each speakers.
Okay, well, let's start with short and sharp definition of resilient in your views. Okay, start from Zone A, Nadia. Nadia, what about your view about resilient and reframing urbanism of resilient city?
Okay, thank you everyone. Let me just share my screen. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we're defining resilient cities, I have, because we were told to keep it very short and crisp, just 2 slides. Firstly, to understand what urban resilience is in urban settings and generally, and that's our measurability of any urban system, its inhabitants, people in it, to, you know, sort of adapt and transform given shocks and stresses. And especially given this COVID-19 crisis, our cities, how they're planned, their management systems, their planning systems, and access to infrastructure services and mitigating, you know, the problems associated with the virus. So on a very urban sort of scale, and this is how I would sort of explain urban resilience moving forward, bringing it to a resilient city. So a resilient city would, you know, in times of tragedies or of traumas or of shocks, whether it's pandemic, whether it's climate change, whether it's technology disruptions, like we were mentioning, it's the ability to sort of adapt in the face of these adversities, the ability of the city to adapt, bounce back, and sort of not dwell in the failure or of the shock, and so acknowledge the situation, acknowledge that this has happened. Now, when the COVID crisis came, the whole world was in shock. People initially couldn't understand what you know, what's happening, how to go about their business, how, you know, people were shutting down or not shutting down. For the case of Pakistan, we shut down 1 month later into the crisis because, you know, everyone was in shock. But eventually, and then we opened up for Eid, for the first Eid that happened, that was also because we were learning how to adapt to this situation, and learning how to be resilient. So resilient city would be one that eventually, going through a failure or a tragedy, would be able to bounce back, acknowledge the situation, learn from the mistakes that they've made, and sort of move forward, which I think at least we're all doing now globally as well. So that's a very sharp, sort of my understanding of what a resilient city should be. And this is in terms of not just city management, I would say city governance, infrastructure, access to services, access to municipal facilities, access to housing. So everything in the city, everything is impacted by a shock. So to be able to go back and sort of learn and adapt to it is what makes a city resilient. And when we talk about my case study, we'll talk more about, what makes Lahore resilient.
Wow. Thank you, Nadia. Interesting. Your keyword is just like to explain about shock, that we can see that the latest news from Beirut, Lebanon,
Yes,
really shocked the world so much, right? Yeah. So just like to move on to Zone B. What about architect Hui Min, short and sharp of resilient and reframing urbanism, please?
Right. For me, the pandemic was a moment of reflection, and it's not. It's about, after looking at the shocks that we've been receiving, we're still going through it. The pandemic hasn't ended yet. So there's whatever small successes we've got. There's still more to come. And you can see that there's more, the climate change, all the floods, the extreme weather coming in recent weeks, in fact, or continued for 4 months in some countries. There's more to come. And so the reflection is, what do you mean by bounce back? I mean, what is precious enough to you that after you've gone through the shock, you cannot live without? That's the time to reflect and start to protect and put in place things to make sure that they don't go away. To me, urban resiliency is more than the environmental or the physical infrastructure. It is as much the social fabric, it's the cultural fabric, it's the economic sustainability, about jobs, about health. So all of these aspects are things that we have to consider, and they make they are critical questions for us to put into the equation when you talk about urban resilience.
Wow, great. Yeah, I see the communal point between Nadia and you. You try to explain with the word of bounce back. Yeah, I really agree, because you try to explain with the sustainability. What about bounce back and capacity or capability to cope with the shock? It's not only the physical thing, it's this the social fabric, cultural aspect as well. This is a good idea from Singapore, from architect Hui Min. Right. So let me move to Zone C. What about short and sharp in your definition, Professor Lee? Professor
Okay.
Lee, right.
Yeah. Thank you for introduction, and thank you for presentation to speakers. I give is my presentation file shared together. Here is my presentation file here. I give is a definition of resilient city in my view. Shock. To presentationer give shock. So is I make a definition initial SHOCK. Shock is the first thing is switching online, and second thing home life sourcing. Third thing, ongoing health. Fourth, changing pattern. And fifth, last thing is knowing digital. So then how can catch shock? Then is I give is another explanation for my shock item. Let's see. Is first explanation is changing global ties. Is in case of economy, in case of technology, in case of politics, in case of society. Those items changed in our life and our pattern. So then let me show some lifestyle evolution. First thing is home rodents and park revival and online contactless technology. Another thing also is lifestyle evolution is health and immunity. Also medical and bio industry. Last thing is international effort and leadership response. This is a lifestyle evolution. Then we see another items changing in business environment. Then first thing is the global value chain. Second, expansion of smart factory. Third, preference for contactless. This is a change in business environment. So those items, those issues give to recover urban architecture in post-COVID-19 pandemic. So let's summary our definition for resilient. Then business environment in fourth industrial revolution connection. So I defined resilient is based on digital transformation and customer value. So it's 5 items connected in digital transformation and customer value.
Architect Lee, sorry to interrupt. Can you put your presentation on the slideshow format, please?
Pardon?
Can you put your presentation on the slideshow format?
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Okay. So this is my definition of resilience.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for all short and sharp presentation about resilience and urbanism in your view. I can see the word that everyone agree with: shock. Shock is the keyword that we need to understand. What about what kind of shock for nowadays? And bounce back capacity that professively try to just like to mix and wrap up for the idea about Nadia and Huimin mentioned. And the interesting point of Professor Lee is just like to raise about the technology that can cope with the shock in the future. Okay, thank you so much. Ajahn Rattapong covered about the next session.
So I think we all get quite a good and brief definition from all three speakers, which is really good. So that will be our framing for each of the countries. So I think each country will have differences more and more in detail. So the next session will be case studies. So for the case study, so each of the speakers will give us some ideas of how they do it. Just simple as that, how they do it. So I think that would be give us very good and to learn and also to see what the others do. Okay, so maybe Professor Pechladda, which zone we're gonna go first? Are we gonna go like ABC the same? Are we gonna switch?
It's up to you. I will start for ABC. lady first.
Oh, lady first.
Right.
Nadia, you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't
now
mind.
you know gender
Sure.
issue. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, let me just share my screen again.
Okay.
My presentation.
So now the audience, we are on the second sessions. Okay. So each of our speakers will we will explain the case study in the countries. Okay, please go ahead, Nadia.
Can you see my slide?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So my case study, I'll just quickly move forward. Okay, so I'm Zone A, Zone A is again Nepal, Pakistan, India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. I'm representing Pakistan. My case study is from Pakistan in the province of Punjab, which is the most densely populated province in the country. It's the most urbanized also, one of the most, second urbanized, and it has a concentration of 5 very large cities. Lahore, Faisalabad, Gujranwala, Rawalpindi, and Multan. And a large part of the province population, because of migration and because of the attractiveness of these cities to pull people into, so the large part of the population in Punjab wants to come and settle into these cities, causing a lot of informal settlements, a lot of sprawl, a lot of slums coming up, deterioration in overall air quality, municipal services, and insecure locations, etc., and risk of eviction. So, that's the general sort of outlook of the province. When we come to a little more detail of the city, I first want to, even not just in light of this COVID-19, but just generally to show how resilient these cities are, or the city of Lahore is. We have an urban population of 37%. In the next 30 years, from projections, it's estimated that 53 million people will be living in the province. So we're adding about 53 more. We know that 53 more million people will be added. And we're seeing this yearly, and we're dealing with it on a yearly basis. That, just to show how resilient these cities are, that they do sort of absorb this population as well, one way or the other. In terms of equity and development, 40% of the people are in the lower income bracket, which means that they're earning less than 15,000 Pakistani rupees a month, which is below minimum wage. So, and so the income disparity is very large, but we're still, since many years, these people and these cities have still been surviving, their people have been surviving regardless of this disparity. Then we have urban sprawl. Our cities, like I said, with all of our large cities, they're really sort of sprawling, and they're low density. So because we don't have the facilities, being a developing country, we don't have the facilities to build up and compact and mixed use and dense. It's more convenient to sprawl. And then our laws are such, or are not as such, that we allow housing societies, etc., to develop on the outskirts of the cities, and the municipal or the local governments or the development authorities go and provide them infrastructure and services, which is a big reason for why urban sprawl is happening. So the cities are expanding outside city boundaries, and we keep changing boundaries, and we're still surviving. Housing and community development. 40% of the income people, 40% of the people with low income that I explained in the previous slide have access to only 5% of the housing. Because the housing sector, which is mostly the private sector, does not develop housing for these people who require the most housing. Transportation planning, for example, intercity buses. In the case of Punjab, we've provided 1,600, but we know that there is a demand for 3,800. So the disparity is there. And regardless of this disparity, people still go, they're resilient. They still get to work, they still make it to their meetings, they still manage somehow. And all these issues sort of show you how resilient these cities are. Environmental planning, waste management, 90% of the water in Lahore city is untreated and goes into the river Ravi. 68% of polluting industries lie within the city boundaries, not outside as industrial estates should be. And 60 to 70% of the urban air quality is degraded and has resulted into vehicular emissions in Pakistan. And then again, we move on to climate change. We have increase in surface temperatures, increase in precipitation, changes in food production, shift in drastic weather patterns, increase in displacement and resettlement of people subject to extreme weather patterns here in Punjab. Pandemics, we all have experienced globally what COVID has done and how it's impacted our cities. It's caused a lot of unemployment of the masses. It's caused people in these informal settlements to be more vulnerable than they were. And it is financially strained our municipal governments. It is, and because there's overcrowding in these areas where these migrants or low-income people live, there's more chances of contamination and the virus spreading. And the economic and social stresses coupled with this can increase gender-based violence exponentially as well. So the pandemic has really had an effect on these cities, regardless of all of them. Moving forward, we'll also talk about technology disruptions. Now, Pakistan is one of the most technologically advanced cities. You know, if our we say we have one metro bus line in Lahore and it's run through an intelligent transport system, but one internet failure and it could, you know, it would cause our public transportation to fail. There is heavy reliance on 4G technologies and internet in the pandemics, but fast connectivity of the internet is not available in even the largest city, which is Lahore in Punjab. So, you know, there are a lot of issues as such. So this was to sort of explain that cities in Punjab, especially if I talk about Lahore, they have these issues, but they have been resilient regardless. When we talk about climate resilient and urban development, I feel that it should include the following measures: improvement in municipal service delivery. There should be an introduction of slum alleviation programs, especially given the pandemics and everything else that's going on, to increase resilience of the most vulnerable sectors of our urban populations. And master planning for all major cities. One of the reasons that I feel that makes cities more vulnerable is if there's no planning. And the problem is that even when we do have master plans, we haven't done our planning thinking about situations such as COVID-19 or situations such as what has happened in Lebanon yesterday. We don't think about disaster risk management, and that's something that we really need to start thinking about post and during the COVID pandemic, and use planning as a tool. As an urban planner, you know, this is what I do for relief to the poor given the situation of our cities. Relief to the poor, provision of affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, slum upgradation, informal marketplaces, formalizing the informal, and pedestrian-oriented planning. Environmental upgradation, industrial zoning, solid waste management, mobility plans to reduce car dependency, and water management plans, economic development, industrial corridor development, taking your industries out of your cities, rural development planning, informal economy, zoning to encourage industrial agglomerations, and tourism development plans to, you know, sort of help our economies or the economies of Lahore to pick up. Community development, planning for public and recreational spaces, adaptive reuse of public buildings, of older buildings, of historic buildings, so that the public has access, development of development in research and libraries, etc. And health and safety, of course, preservation of green and forest land, design and building bylaws to preserve our local ecologies, public safety measures, etc. So in terms of my case study, which was Lahore, which was broader, generally the large cities in Pakistan, and Lahore as a focus, I feel that these cities, they have all these issues. This is what I or any planner or anyone would sort of propose to deal with it. All of these issues need to be addressed. But regardless of all of these issues, these cities are still surviving. The people are still, you know, still want improvement, and they want things to move forward, and people are looking for solutions. And I think it should be a joint global effort to help each other, and different zones also to and learn from each other who are more developed than, say, Pakistan, to tell, you know, to share our knowledge. And I think the ArcAsia is an excellent, and ACAE is a great platform for us to do that, to understand how others have done it and what we can do to make our cities more resilient going in the future. Thank you. This was for the second part.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it seems to be like more and more, maybe the causing problem is more like from the populations and how the city is development. And also it's a lot of the infrastructure needs to be prepped and ready for the population of the city.
Oh, yeah.
That's more obvious how you need to develop that and how to bounce it back. Okay, so thank you very much for Nadia. Okay, next, another ladies from Singapore, women. Will you please go ahead for the case studies?
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Nadia, for a very broad overview at an urban scale. I'm going to take you to a building scale and talk through 2 case studies in Singapore that are, to me, good examples of sustainable development through innovation. And that is an important part of resiliency in urban, what I consider important aspects of resilient urbanism. So the same reflection that I made before, a little bit more, that the pandemic has revealed, you know, there was lots going on. People had rose-colored glasses on before the pandemic, and it's basically shaken everything to the core. And what's left at the core is sustainability, well-being, social equity, inclusivity, flexibility, and resiliency. And these were always important needs, but we've layered other things on top. They were hidden for a long time. And now these are the most important things that we have to think about for the future. And when things become less catastrophic, people will start to forget this again. And I hope that whatever we are saying here won't be forgotten. Let's say a year from now, when the vaccine comes out, we need to still remember as architects and planners to advocate for, we are the advocates for sustainability, well-being, and resiliency. Just a little bit of context. The company that I'm a part of is a global company. We are quite large. But what we're showing to you today is from our work in Singapore, because our main design thinking and source of our research is in Singapore. And Singapore is very small compared to many countries out there. We have a certain kind of survival angst. So we always need to innovate. We feel that it's innovate or bust. We don't have any relevance in the world unless we are always trying to step one step ahead. So that's the context I need to put in ahead of you. It's not that we've got a lot more resources than other people. It's just we're a little bit more nervous about our existence. So at DP, we have sustainable design at the core. So we advocate, we are part of the Singapore Architects Declare for Climate and Biodiversity Emergency, which means that every project that we do our best to advocate for best practices to combat climate change. And that's measured by a design framework that we measure our the outcomes of our design. And there is a methodology that we go through the environmental and physical simulation of our designs before it goes into implementation. And so we use a lot of technology. So this is going to be quite a technology-heavy presentation. So we analyze not just the passive design through our own tools, also work with engineers in a multidisciplinary manner to look at energy reductions. And now we are also stepping into the smart building space to look at space as a service and a digital twin, because we find that just designing or architecture, there's a certain limit to the reach that we can go in terms of trying to get a sustainable outcome and to promote flexibility and resiliency. And two of the examples I'm going to show you now is a reflection of that. First one is a unique project. It's a hospital project technically, but it's actually combining a hospital, a hotel, and a retail corridor. And this project was a result of, was made possible because of a planning innovation. First of all, the land, in most cities, when you try to build something like that, you'll reach a lot of planning restrictions. Something that's designated healthcare can only be hospital. You cannot put anything else on it. But this particular piece of land was free for people to propose. You can propose what you want. Not every piece of land in Singapore is like this, but this particular site was a white site. And the business case, what your benefit for the community, you put that all forward to get that piece of land. And the result was this project, which was headed by a few very innovative doctors. Why is it innovative? Because it actually blended the project entirely. The hotel and the hospital are seamlessly integrated. So you can see that this is actually a cross-section of the hotel. The medical parts are in blue, and the hospitality part, which is the hotel part, and the convention center, and the hotel kitchens and all that are in orange. They are even though on the outside they look like two separate buildings, but they're actually quite seamlessly integrated. And there's a retail corridor below. The reason is because it allowed the customers of the hospital, so the families of the hospital patrons could also stay there if they're foreign, and visit their loved ones when in times of need, to be on call in times of need. And you don't have to travel very far for that. And also, then you can have a lot of shared facilities, your common facilities, the back of house, kitchens and all that. You could then save on them when you start to bring them together. When this project was first envisaged, the practicality of bringing this together was so that you can extend the hospital. The hospital has all the high expensive equipment for medical equipment, but most of the time during a recovery process, you don't really need to stay in, let's say, a room that has all the gases and all that. You can actually recuperate in more like a hotel room, but you want to be close to the clinics, you want to be closer to the doctors, you can just go to the hotel. So that then the resources used for the high medical areas are given to the people with greater medical needs. So you can flex. You could have both, as in you can recover in the hotel in a lower cost setting, more comfortable setting, but you're close to what you needed to. And then if your recovery doesn't go smoothly, you can just wheel back into the hotel wing for your emergency treatment and so on and so forth. That was for the flexibility, to rethink the idea of what a hospital is. But when the pandemic hit, it actually became really, really useful, because this flexibility was what helped the hospital, both the hospital and the hotel, cope with the new demands. This amount of flexibility was very, very important. And underlying all of this, not just the flexible use of spaces, the enhanced user experience and safety, it was also a digital backbone. It could only happen when the whole building was digitally integrated. The building, of course, it has it's designed based on biophilic design principles. That's the part of trying to maintain the well-being of the occupant. And it's evidence-based design where biophilic principles derive from research. We use them to apply them into the design of the space. So whether it's in form of environmental features, the use of water, use of nature shapes, airflow, light and space, we incorporated that into the design of the entire building, not just the hospital alone. Also, climate responsive design. The facade was designed to mitigate the amount of daylight that would come into the various spaces. And so as a result of this integration, the patient experience was quite good. You don't feel like you're in a hospital anymore. you feel like you're somewhere in between. The hospital doesn't really feel like a hospital. The hotel doesn't really feel like a hotel. And when you integrate everything together, then when you are staying in this hospital, you don't have to eat hospital food. You eat hotel food. The kitchen is the same. And the digital experience extends right down to the retail part. So you can even order online shopping from the shops below. And the digital backbone also linked up all the healthcare information. So the doctors literally can get access to what they needed to from their phone and didn't need to be in a particular place, and information could pass seamlessly from stage to stage of your treatment without loss. Okay, so the second example I wanted to show you was more of a precinct level. Well, although when I say precinct, it's a very small plot compared to the types of precincts you would see in Nadia's presentation, per se. But this is a very interesting example. So when you want to wire up entire building, people say, yeah, wiring up an entire building and future-proofing it, investing in digital technology to future-proof the project is easy for a building, but to do it for, let's say, a cluster of buildings, in this case, in Paya Lebar Quarter, is a mixed-use project. It's linked to, it's a gateway to Paya Lebar, which is a district just a sub-city center district in Singapore. So it's a gateway to Paya Lebar with 2 MRT stations, 2 metro stations, crossing of 2 metro stations. It's a transit-oriented mixed-use development. It has a little bit of retail, office, as well as residential apartments in this small precinct. It is connected by a canal, actually an underground canal that we turned into a park, and there are roads that cross in between them. So what was important in this project, like any other good project, you need to maintain your relationship to the community. So part of the community outreach we did with this project, not only were the neighboring stakeholders, the community, consulted on what they wanted in the public realm before the project designs were completed. The project was entirely porous, so that the green corridor was created to connect up and stitch up the greater continuity of the neighborhoods at ground level, the green corridors at ground level, and then above ground, where the pink lines show connectivity to it's above ground, second level connections from the projects around us, walking through the buildings in the project to the metro stations. So that connection to the community, the connectivity, the outreach, bringing everybody into a central space, a community space, was a part of a very important part of the project, right down to the design of the facades, which reflected the local Malay culture of Paya Lebar and Gelang Serai. So what's very interesting over all of that, the fundamentals of good design, we also layered on it, the project team layered on it a digital twin. So essentially every single service within the building across all the commercial projects, so whether it's the security cameras, lighting, water, and all that, they were all linked together with a single brain. And that single brain really helps to mitigate, it's basically the single source of truth for you to have situational awareness of what's going on in the project. And what is really interesting is something like that really helps you cope with disasters. When something happens in one corner, you can immediately analyze the situation, act upon it, shut it off, and then reroute and have another way to deal with a situation, whether it's the form of security or fire, or trying to understand what happened in that particular place. So it's also very interesting because every piece of equipment is connected, and you can have data recorded into this digital twin so that you can then analyze it and predict the next failure. So what I wanted to then use these two examples to showcase, one of the ways to add or build resilience to change and flexibility is to add a digital layer. And traditionally, it's not in the realm of architects and planners. I think we have to change our mindsets towards that. And educational institutions already are opening up to that, but they need to do more to open up the creators of the urban realm to be able to be enabled to tackle this layer. If you think of structure, interior design, facade, all of these as layers of the building, we need to be trained to design the digital layer because it is our interface to the building. If you imagine that now, okay, so you have, everybody is going through this as a phone. Your path, your gateway to the digital world is purely your phone. Your phone breaks, there's no other gateway. What if the entire building is an interface? That's a way to also look at the future and how you build resilience in your environment. So I wanted to take this opportunity, since we're talking mainly to an academic crowd in ACAE seminar, to seed this in your minds. What if we mapped out a future of responsive buildings where the buildings or physical environment, whether it's an urban environment, smart city, is all woven together. If you imagine all these things we already do, things that mitigate comfort and well-being, the air conditioning system, the cameras, the space, the light, the sound, even surfaces or signage systems, they are all now linked together into a single brain. What would your future environment be like? Because it will be more than physical. The way you interact with the digital world, your virtual and physical worlds will merge more. And it's one way to build more resilience in our environment. So that's how I would like to end in. That's the future I would like to, question, a point of discussion I would like to raise for discussion as part of urban resilience. So this is something that, just one last slide to show that we're starting to do that in our own office. Before you can start to do responsive spaces, you have to measure them and understand how your spaces perform. As architects, how often do you actually go back and measure how well the spaces you've designed actually work? And that's one thing that we are lacking really in our industry. We don't go back and figure out, did it work? Did we learn any lessons from it? And that's one thing that we can do better. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So interesting aspect from women. I think it's very technology oriented for how to become a resilient city, especially the first project. I think it's quite interesting how it combined hotel and hospital together. I think everything now is like need to be convergent, right? You need to be well integrated with all the technology aspect you have, right? That's why it's interesting for the second project that you also mentioned that the connections to the location, connection to the community is quite important for your project as well. And also in the end, you also mentioned post-evaluation. After you finish building, you need to evaluate how the user using it as well. I think that might be the framework that the audience might think it's a good idea to learn and to develop into their own platform. So thank you very much for very good thought from Hui-Min. So the next one will be from Korea, Professor Lee.
Yep. Thank you for presentation, Hui-Min. Is especially focused on is high technology. So is my case study, resilient city in my country is focused on Seoul City. So Seoul City has a good smart city. So is I show is my presentation file on screen. Let's show. Have you seen?
No, not yet. Still okay. We see it.
You see?
Yes.
Okay, this is Seoul City Plan for Smart City. So is one good case study, resilient city in my country. So is this usually use smart city. Then is I show is a strategy for smart city in Seoul. So is 8 strategy. Is first is smart technology at present are consumer oriented. Second strategy, production technology results in unemployment. Unemployment mean is untaxed strategy. Third, smart technology is insufficient to resolve urban challenges directly. Four, mitigation of regional supply gap and creation technological network. 5. Emphasis on software and system development. For example, 5G. 6. Technologies answering environmental and social needs must be priorities. 7. Human desires direct experience. 8. Creation of urban space environment to host smart technology. This is a Seoul City Smart City strategy. Then we make a resilient city in Seoul. Then this is a urban case in Seoul. Next, I want to show another case, especially focus on design. How can recover space in our life? Then we must think, how should urban architecture respond? We have social distance to protect Corona-19 virus, as like this picture. So then how can arrange existing space? We think design again. So we approach one thing, eco-friendly complex space. In Vitruvius' time, 3 elements of architecture is very important thing. Then we add 2 items. One is environment. Second, safety. Addition to Vitruvius' 3 elements. In the future, residents in post-COVID-19 era must have changes that address new mode of life. So today, this presentation is designed to offer basic blueprint to future residents' schematics. I show unit space, community space, and big space. How can change it design in post-COVID-19 age? Let's show first thing. Eco-friendly complex space need to wind penetration to give fresh air in housing area. This is one example. How can give fresh air in residence site area. Then also this penetration wind giver mitigation heat island phenomena by securing wind passage. Also, another thing, we take pilot space, employment pilot space to secure wind passage and green space with a complex. Then we make a good environment to cover COVID-19 infection. So this is one design example to cover COVID-19 infection. Also give a social distance. Second example is unispace. Every room function, every residence has one-to-one function in indoor space. But we must change one-to-one function space. So home become a venue for work, repose, shopping, and entertainment. In unispace, make a multi-use or flexible utilization. Then shape change, also space change. So home is now more than location, one respite and depart. So this is one example, residential schematic of new age in post-COVID-19 age. Then I want to show another thing. Unit space. This is a real time, usual time. Daytime workspace. Nighttime bed space. Also, sometimes it's fixed clean area, but work time is changed furniture by work. So then we use indoor space as a flexible unit space to address various needs and demands. Then also we take alpha room as an essential layer for home office. Then we have a dual function in home area. Sometime office work, sometime home stay. So household separation, we change. Also, I show another thing. Changed in residence. Large space. Divide small space. Also use some fixed space and flexible space. Then we changed large space to focus to small space or community space structure. This screen shows Also, front door changed sanit space. So sanitary space to block and prevent outdoor pollution. And in case of kitchen, we changed kitchen space as a lower location for hobby or activities. This is usually space change to minimize contact through separation and private. And next thing is we give some terrace space in residence area. Essential outdoor element with frequent confinement practice. So it's a play and park or carpet or camping, multi-use in terrace area. Also, this screen show is an example of multi-application of terrace space. And next is public space is changed eco-friendly core plans. This screen shows is the example of eco-friendly core plans. Also, this core show contactless lobby. Dual message in this screen, eco-friendly and multi-use to react post-COVID-19. So, also, eco-friendly element including smart farms and clean farms. Let's see next community space plan. Social distance give a change community space plan. So post-COVID-19 era would demand novel and flexible plan. So let's see. Primary prevention space is like this screen. And also we give buffer zone to separate one space and the other space. And also give a lateral circulation. Community space plan need to control 3 issues. This is an example for community space plan. Another thing, we use level difference to separate infection effect. Then architecture space plan addressing the natural geological structure. Walking standard relying on natural ground level, as like this. And versatile community space plan addressing socio-environmental needs. Then we make a merge between street space and community facility. This screen show is the level used to separate each function in community space. Let's see another thing. Last is design case, vehicle space, parking space. When we meet COVID-19, then everyone use personal vehicle to protect infection. So then is we take is vehicle use space. So let's show one thing. This is a market through. It's a pickup space and marketplace. So is never go in shop area. Just is come through shop area to pick up desired items from shop area by car. Also is clean through. Is drop option separate from inside and outside. Also control the car drop option. This is an example for how can use vehicle use space in driving space. This photo show is a drop option installation in case of post COVID-19 age. Okay, this is my case studies for resilience.
Okay, so thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Some more, right?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So I think it's quite interesting because hopefully you were talking about from the bigger scale into the more human scale, more architecture scale, and also I think it's quite interesting that even though the pandemic crisis really separates us from each other, there's a way. Professor already talked about how he integrated the system of natural ventilation, natural circulation, and helping in design to, even though we're still in the same place, same space, but the design helping us separated to have our physical distance for the safety. Okay, so it is quite really good example, and also because it's giving us our life back. Because in the beginning, I think everyone know that we really like living in the our own house, right? That's why we really getting bored with our space, and then we try to connect with outside and also with the nature. So it is quite interesting. So I think that's end of the second sessions. Professor Pechladda, should we go on next?
Sure. Yeah. It's really great to hear that from all our special speakers. I can see many various views. First, from Nadia, it's just like she just tried to explain about the urban planning view and try to link between poor and poverty, overcrowding with the space, and it's just like it's hard and difficult to cope with the pandemic. And second, I see the good view from Hui Min as the practitioner. She tried to explain about the mixed use space. She tried to explain about mixing between hotel and hospital. It's really interesting for the pandemic now. We can see the mixed use can help this. And she tried to link between passive design, active design, and smart design with Professor Lee, and it's really interesting for explaining about the space for human space and interior design. We need to understand about the buffer zone and transition. Lastly, just like to ask you all for what about the role as the urban planner, practitioner, and professor? What about the role to cope with the unprecedented future and sustainable future as a designer? First, just like to start with Nadia, please. All right, Nadia. Hello, Nadia.
Let me just share my screen.
Okay.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah. Very clear. Yeah.
Okay, great. So So role of, as a, I am an architect. I'm also an urban development expert and a planner. So I'm looking at it in a broader perspective, and it was very interesting for me because how Human explained things, about mixed use and compact development and transit-oriented development. That's something that I come to. But so my approach to this is two-phased. One is as a planner, as an urban planning expert. If I talk in terms of planning, I think for cities, especially with issues such as the ones I explained in my presentation earlier, like Lahore has, of overcrowding, of inequality, of a lot of migration that takes place, of inequity and inequitable distribution of wealth, of non-availability of low-cost housing, and the spread and sprawl of the city. One of the things that we can do from a planning point of view is managing urban densities, looking at both our social and physical infrastructure. If we do not make our cities more mixed use, compact, we do not have, especially in a country like Pakistan, we don't have the physical, social, economic capacity to cater to the sprawl. So as a policy maker, it would be, we need to build on our systems, decentralize them, and sort of let planning go down to the local level, and give more empowerment to our local government systems also, to sort of manage these issues within their areas and localities. So it's more of a policy. It's a broader thing from a planning term. So it starts with your master planning, it starts with your planning law, it starts with a change in your local government system, and it's not an easy process. It's a long process, but it's just something that planners like myself are for in countries like Pakistan, and we hope that there will be a change that will come in from a planning perspective. Again, in terms of again, the planning side of it, we need to foster economic geography. We need to recreate patterns of commute in these areas, in a city like Lahore. We need to look at rural-urban migration, public transport, incidents of economic activity, and see how people are commuting. We also need to look at the development, because I mentioned in Punjab, we have 5 large cities, the development of our intermediate cities, so that the burden is taken off our large cities, and people, instead of wanting to come to a place like Lahore, Karachi, Islamabad, Mumbai, Delhi, they have other cities with good infrastructure, with good schools, good jobs that they can go to. And that's something that in Pakistan, Punjab has focused a lot on. So I would say that a lot of intermediate cities such as Pechladda, Sialkot are being developed and are being planned in a manner so that we can take this burden off. Again, from a macro level, accommodating the informal employment. When we do our census, or I wouldn't say that, but we don't count, or we don't look at policies for our informal sectors, home-based workers, street hawkers, domestic workers. And that's something that we need to cater for, especially after this pandemic, because these people are hit the hardest. We need to protect people with multiple deprivations, gender, migrant, person with disabilities, because they again are the most vulnerable and hit the hardest. And these are things that that need to first come from a top-down policy level. You need to have policies, regulations in place, and then you find mechanisms how to get this done. We need to extend urban amenities and reduce overcrowding in informal settlements, especially in our slums and our squatter settlements, etc. How we do that is, again, it has to be a policy. It has to come. People have to think, sit together. I don't have all the answers. This is the first time I, as a planner, have also experienced something like this, a pandemic such as the COVID-19. And these are all questions also that all of us are now talking about and thinking about when we go forward. And we need to capitalize on our built infrastructure to develop social safety nets. Again, taking from the slums part, I have a picture here from Bangladesh. I thought this was very interesting. WaterAid had given a little during this COVID, these circles in very crowded areas for social distancing and these sanitizers and things, which otherwise people living in this maybe a lower income community would not have access to. And these are things that we need to start thinking of moving forward in the bigger realm. So this is from a planning point of view. From an architectural and urban design point of view, and this is exactly, Humin, when you presented your slides, I was, I was like jumping with joy, because that's exactly what I think we should be doing in our cities. We need to rethink and redesign our urban precincts. We need to make sure that we reduce car dependencies in these precincts or these blocks. We introduce walkability. We introduce these eco-friendly and sort of multi-use spaces also. And like Lee said, areas with natural circulations and buffer zones, all of this needs to be introduced within precincts and blocks. We need to start thinking at that neighborhood level. And we need to start reclaiming our street, because our streets are really they're just for people who own cars, and they don't accommodate for a person who does not own a car. And then especially, so we need to sort of reclaim a street, larger commercial streets and corridors for the people. So we need to start thinking more of placemaking and start thinking at more of a sort of human scale rather than a larger scale. And I think that everything that was said by the other presenters and their case studies, they show exactly what I would suggest that we start thinking on and doing for a country such as Pakistan. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Your view is really interesting because you are a planner with the background of architect. So your reflection is just like you try to link between social aspect with physical design. It's really great. And I love the idea that you need to explain people for understand about economic geography. That is really great. Now I think that it's really good point that we have the base for the background as the architect, so we can understand and linking in the platform of urban development, right? Okay, so let's go to Huy Min as the practitioner. What about your role as a designer for cope with the shock in the future and for sustainability in the future? Huy Min, please.
Thank you. I think that the role of the architect needs to change or evolve. Where in the past, especially as practitioners, we would very much be very faithful to what our clients ask us to do. I think because we have a responsibility as people who look to the future, planners and designers obviously live and look in the future. And we need to pull people away from being conservative, because when the future is less predictable, people tend towards a more conservative standpoint. They don't want to do that much. They're more selfish. They kind of they would not go for the greater good as a default. And as a practitioner, as a professional, we need to advocate for the greater good, and we need to advocate for sustainability, social equality, inclusiveness, and those have to be very conscious, and if they were not top of agenda in previous designs, they have to become top of agenda now. And thankfully there is a community out there. People want this. People who are funding projects want this as well. So as an architect, we need to have our advocacy role come on stronger to educate our clients and the general public of the greater good, looking further into the future, not in the immediate future, and also give areas of innovation so that the students and the graduates that are coming out fresh into the worst job market in decades have new hope, because there's not so many jobs out there now doing conventional design. And there needs to be an innovation in our industry to not lose talent. I feel very worried about this current generation of graduates. We're going to lose them if our architecture industry cannot absorb them. And we need to think innovatively how we can do that.
Thank you, Huimin. I really love your idea that you try to explain the society nowadays, because you mentioned that when we cannot predict the future seems to be fraught with difficulties. People tend to be conservative view. Yeah, exactly. That's why I understood when you explained this situation, and you try to insist that as the architect, as the practitioner for the large project, we need to advocate for the sustainability design, since it's just like the one way to keep human for the better future. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And now, what about the view from Zone C? Professor Lee, what about the role as the architect and professor? Could you please explain about our role?
Okay, I have this two roles on urban designers and architect. As first thing is the role of urban designers, and second thing is the roles of architect. Is now is people give the roles of urban designers, then is I take a diagnosis for urban phenomena and pandemic aspect in city. So is let's show is screen as I share is my screen. Okay, see your screen. Then I give a diagnosis for this urban designers to make a role. Is first thing is the phenomena, and second thing is the pandemic result in this time. So is I take is transmission as a phenomena. As a first thing is the region with the developed economy and constant international exchange are especially susceptible due to high rate population and supply migration. Second transmission is high density venue and space become platform for infection. Transmission 3, low income, underprivileged, senior residential cluster, susceptible, higher risk and lower management. Transmission 4, secondary transmission from metropolis to urban area. Extension. Then this is a metropolitan city and usual city problem and phenomena. Next, we have a pandemic as like COVID-19. Then we have result of pandemic. First thing is COVID-19 induced weather infection and global economic crisis. Second pandemic, rapid application, contact-less economy, and smart technology. This is predicted cause rise in unemployment. So let's summarize this diagnosis. World economy accelerating global climate change and environment crisis, such as population migration, high population density, and wealth gap. Then, how can take a role on urban designers. Then we give two approach in roles: sustainable development reconceptualization and recovering the relationship with global and local ecosystem. So we have is many urban challenges: growth management policy versus urban redistribution policy. Then urban designers take a role to control sustainable development reconceptualization, as like this. Second, new direction in sustainable development we make in urban strategy. First, complexity and connectivity. Second, self-sufficient bioregion. Third, access to social and cultural infrastructure. This is the role of urban designers for sustainability and unprecedented future. Next, I give the role of architect for sustainability and unprecedented future. Free from the constraint digital age, technological advanced. So, contact risk social policy could emphasize individual isolation and exclusion. Capitalism would induce application, robotics, and AI. The rapid introduction of innovation means independent regional industry and urbanization. So, the role of architect, what is? A simple disease control strategy against the pandemic is inadequate to support sustainable economic and social progress. This is to seek fundamental changes existing global order. And prior to this metamorphosis, a sustainable regional economic and urban planning must be procured. This is a message for the role of architect to recover sustainability in city. This is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Yeah, your reflection is just like, I love that you mentioned that each society must decide how to pursue the evolution, because we have different aspects, different contexts in each country. For example, in Lahore-Pakistan, it's just like developing country as well as Thailand and Bangkok. We have overcrowding as a problem. So we need to understand what about the migration, high population, and wealth gap. This is the big gap that we need to get through before solving or the pandemic or the shock in the future. And you try to wrap up for what about the role of the architect and professor. Sustainable development risk conceptualization is the main idea that we need to get to. The first is just like complexity and connectivity. And the second, just like self-sufficiency for bioregion. And then the access to infrastructure. It's just like to try to reduce the gap of the accessibility. That's great idea. Now, it's just like time for Q&A. And I just like to say good afternoon and good evening to our members from Pakistan, from Lahore, from India. I saw Jahangir Khan, I saw Dr. Mona Reddy, I saw the student from the Philippines, and I saw many audience from Thailand as well. And Ajahn Adka, what about our Q&A? So just start with first question, please.
Okay, so thank you very much for all interesting views and reframing with the whole team. Okay, so for the Q&A sessions, now we have participants about 100. Let me check. We got 111 just 10 minutes ago in the Zoom. Okay, and we have some more on the Facebook Live. Okay, on the Facebook Live. So for the question, we have quite interesting question, and actually some question already directed to our speakers. And maybe I'll begin with one directly asked Nadia. Okay, so it's about the urban planning. Okay, there's a question from Indonesia. Okay, she want to ask because of the post COVID-19, for example, because Pakistan is very crowded country, so it's quite issue related to the corona spreading. So in the future, how to plan and design a public and recreational space as a response to the COVID-19. So if it's getting back in the future, how we're gonna like design a new urban space in the future?
Thank you. That's a very interesting question. And like I said, I think none of us really know exactly. I mean, we're all thinking, we're all just planning, because this is something very new, and this is the first time we face something like this. But when we talk about public spaces designing into the future, post-COVID, one of the things which I also showed in my last slides is, and which Myung also mentioned, is designing public spaces as blocks, as part of neighborhood levels, which we don't do. We design a public space which caters to the whole city. Perhaps because of this overcrowding and social distancing, we need to design and start thinking about public and open spaces at the neighborhood level, so that it caters to everybody. And you can create then what architect Professor Lee also says, when it's at the neighborhood level, you can try and have buffer zones and try to include natural circulation. The amount of people, one can sort of calculate the amount of people that live within a neighborhood or at walking distance, and on those lines. And these are still thoughts, and we're all in the planning process of how we're going to handle public spaces and just generally our cities going forward. So I hope that gives some idea.
I think it's quite interesting because in Thailand now we have that system. That's the way how we control the pandemic of the corona-19, because we use our micromanagement system. So each community look after each other. So that everyone. So know that guys go to that place. So you know what I mean, right? So that's how they control the pandemic.
Exactly. So that's how we need to start thinking about even our public spaces at the neighborhood, at the local community level, so that it's manageable, and designing our precincts then with all of our rules and that go into placemaking and urban design, as already discussed today.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that and also address a situation where everyone is feeling a little bit shell-shocked by the scale of the catastrophe that we are facing every day. But if you kind of just think about, okay, it's not at a level I can solve, I need world governments to change, I need economic, social inequality to disappear overnight, it's going to be very, everybody will feel very helpless. But if you kind of take back your community, every little thing that you can do gives a little bit of ownership to create a better world for, to cope, helping each other cope. I think dealing with public spaces on a local level, private level, privately owned public spaces are a way to go. Yeah, it will alleviate a lot of the budgets from the cities to deviate it to essential infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay, so it's really interesting question. So the next, so the next one would be for Hui Min. I think this kind of like I like this question. Can you elaborate more on the digital layers? I think it's quite interesting how digital layer will affect for our design in the future. Okay, can you elaborate?
Yeah, because, so I'm going to say something very unpopular. Okay, so a little bit about my education in the United States. When I was getting my master's degree, it was the way that you delivered your architectural the way that my architecture viewpoint was very much shaped by the internet world, because it was the .com boom. So that's why I'm quite pro technology. But if you come from a technology standpoint, it will solve nothing. You always have to start with your outcomes. You have to start with what I want to achieve. So I wouldn't say necessarily that you need to use technology to solve everything, but you need to have a good foundation. For instance, let's say you started with bringing communities together in a public space. Your fundamentals must be great. Your connectivity must be great. Your community engagement must be well done. You must be properly engaged, and you open your boundaries. And then you can add. You want to do digital layers, and then those enablers will come. And to do this additional layers, because you need to, if you want to reap the benefits of the digital layer, you need to be equipped. You have to be conversant in programming. The architects need to pick this up. The schools don't teach it, but you need to learn. You need to be conversant in some kind of BIM technology if you want to be in construction going forward. So a lot of these things, unfortunately, many of our architectural institutions, and I would be very frank to say that the ones that in Singapore, because of the graduates that come out, they're very good, but in terms of the technology side, they're not as equipped. And the openness to that needs to start from the young, the students themselves. When I was in school, I didn't wait for the teachers to tell me you need to learn the internet. You go and learn it yourself. You just start there. The spirit of innovation and experimentation needs to be there. An environment needs to be there for people to pick this up. And honestly, a lot of things I showed to you are also work in progress. There's no stated way of telling you how to do a digital twin, how to do a digital layer. You have to have that spirit of experimentation to go forward. So that's what I would like to share. Fundamentally, your foundation and your outcomes must be clear before you want to talk about technology. And if you want to engage with technology, you need to have a spirit of experimentation and innovation. That starts from education. It starts from maybe not going with the norm. That kind of spirit has to be within you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you, Hui Min. Yes, we need to start from the education. It matters, right? Yeah. And the next question is just like move to Professor Lee. I got a question about residential area. What measures in planning and design has to be taken for a better health for the citizens, particularly in residential areas? What measures? Professor Lee. All right.
Yep. As I imagine, so what question to me is then is you focus on residence areas. So, but as I think before answering your question, as I wanna show another screen file. Is let's show is short time. You see this one?
Yes.
On screen? as I check this historical effect on pandemic. So is from ancient to contemporary time. Then is we have is several pandemic effect in the world. Then is they changed city plan and they give us city development and also is give some space change is under the portal on screen is this is some middle age change the space in city and also garden city and ideal city and also is the some is the apartment residence area from is industrial area. So then is we have is a lot of pandemic items in the world. Then is when I analyze how can affect pandemic items in the world. Then is we have is a lot of changed by pandemic flag and Spain flu and something like COVID-19. So then when I analyze these items, then we must prepare some design change in lifestyle and also social economic change. Then we prepare is how can connect high technology to renew and redesign the residence area and lifestyle. This is my preparation for post Corona-19 age.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Professor. That's it? Okay. Okay. Thank you. I love the idea that you try to explain by link between the timeline of humanity that we face or encounter with many shock in the past, and now we try to develop things. And the most important thing is just like we concern about the public health and social welfare. So we can see the measurements from humanity, from many law and regulation. For example, in Bangkok or in Singapore, we start from hygienic in urban and in society. And now we faced with the COVID-19, we might see the new measurements through the law and regulation and design as well after this shock passed. And then just like to finish or conclude things, Andrianta, do you have any idea or conclusion for the webinar today?
Any words?
Well, okay. Well, thank you so much of you. I mean, it's such a brilliant moderation. It's like a Donny and Marie Osmond. We have a dual moderator today by Professor Dr. Pechladda and also my good friend here, Professor Rattapong. And I would like to say thank you so much again to all the ACAE family. I would like to say thank you to immediate past President Architect Jahangir. Just now he joined us. And also our committee members, Architect Khadijah from Pakistan, Architect Kifayat, Architect Fawad, Dr. Mona Randi, yeah, I saw it, from Egypt, Indonesia, Architect Saifuddin Mutaki, and also Denny Setiawan. From Malaysia, Architect Datin Nowina also joined us. Sri Lanka, Architect Jayanta, Architect Russell, I can see that. Singapore, Architect Han, my good friend there. And then also the President of Architect Anjumala from Nepal. Thank you so much for joining us. And also for all the students, educators. I think today, when we heard all these three panelists mention about this symbiosis information from Zone A, Zone B, Zone C, such a very precise and concise definition, and also some case study that you guys explained with the relevance event from Lahore, Pakistan, Singapore, Korea, and also our role as a designer and planners. We could say that for all the students, you have to understand the art of urban planning is not just to do fantasize or just imagination. It's the best way to change future. It's about to design it. So it's a good platform. It's a good lectures. It's very informative because it's concurrent to our ACAE Students Architecture Design Competition 2020, which is announced by Architect Gaindra, our chairman of ACAE, Resilience by Design. So I hope all the students here and also the lecturers, educators do keep in touch with your institute to participate in this competition. So we can see here related to, don't forget, related to what Architect Lee said just now, to respond with the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, with the 17 elements. And I can tell you it's a beautiful session. To all students, always remember this, and also to educators, architects, urban designers, we need to ask ourselves if what you are doing today is getting you closer to where you want it to be for tomorrow's city. So thank you so much for all of us today. And thank you to technical partner, Nippon Paint team. I hope that this Facebook Live and will be accommodated to YouTube so that the students can rewatch and make a revision. So from here, I would like to please welcome our chairman of ACAE, Architect Gaindra, to give a few words or thank you to all participant panelists today. Please.
Thank you, Adranta, for such wonderful words. And I really wanted to welcome IPP Jahangir, who's we're fortunate that he's gracing the occasion. He's there. And my colleagues from ACAE, Khadija, Mutaki, Professor Mutaki, thank you so much for joining in. Jayanta, Russell, my colleague in Arcacia OBCC. So I really miss my president right now, Rita, and women would support me in that, would echo my feelings, because this is she wanted the same thing. And she wanted ACA to debate on resilience and resilience urbanism, resilience, which is very close to Rita's heart. And so I think our words would reach Rita through women. And though she's representing Rita on this occasion from OBCC, I'm thankful to women who accepted this this invitation of being one of the speakers. We are honored with your experience and your discussions here. Also to my friend from Lahore, Nadia, thank you so much. You are a wonderful gift to ACA. Now we'll keep bothering you. And Architect Sikli, thank you so much. This is absolutely a perfect Acacia program where we have a presentation from all three zones and beautifully moderated by my dear friend, Professor Pechladda and Professor Art. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, on all the attendees, students, and every first Wednesday of the month, this is going to be ACAE webinar series, Acacia ACAE webinar series, knowledge sharing series. So now we would see you on 2nd September with a separate topic, with a new topic, with new faces. So till then, goodbye, stay safe, and be happy. So thank you so much. And
thank you. Bye.
Bye. Be safe, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Perhaps maybe we'll hold on. We take a group photo from here.
All right.
Yes.
Can you take one for us?
Yeah, sure. Let's do for it. Okay. Smile, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Be safe. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.